Whether it's called critical race theory, critical theory, anti-racism, social justice theory, JEDI, social and emotional learning, intersectionality, equity, or educational equity, it's all essentially the same thing. It's all a neo-Marxist ideology based upon the same false premise that America was conceived in and founded upon slavery, that America is systemically racist, a white supremacist nation whose institutions oppress blacks and other minorities to this very day. These people who are pushing this in our schools are teaching white teachers and students, young children, to live their lives believing they are inherently racist, that they carry with them something called white guilt, that they, to this day, are carrying out through their otherwise innocent interactions with blacks the evils perpetrated by white slave masters against black slaves hundreds of years ago. This is so cruel to make our teachers and students, our children, believe that they are evil racists. And with regard to our children, this is a form of child abuse.
Parents, we are not going to be silent, and we are not going to go away. These are our children. Just because we parents send our children to a public government school, that does not mean we hand over the rights to the government to indoctrinate them with what they want to do.
The theory uses discrimination to combat discrimination. It uses racism and sexism to combat racism and sexism. Go to school board meetings and demand curriculum transparency. We already addressed slavery and women's suffrage and civil rights in school curriculum. It's not like we don't teach the sins of the past. So request the teaching of inclusion, individualism, respect for oneself and others as a result. Dr. Bennett, the Secretary of Education under Ronald Reagan, wrote in his introduction to his Book of Virtues, if we want our children to possess the trait of character we most admire, we need to teach them what those traits are and why they deserve admiration and allegiance.
It appears my children will be made the scapegoats for the policies of racist politicians from our past. In the 1970s, then United States Senator Joe Biden loudly and strongly opposed the integration of our public schools through busing because he didn't want his white children to go to school in what he called a racial jungle. So I guess my children will now pay the price for that. For example, CRT and equity education promote the use of different standards for grading and disciplining black and white children. They argue that black children are oppressed by whites and thus must be treated differently, dare I say more favorably, than white children. Different treatment based upon race. Is this the modern day separate but equal, just in reverse? Well, if Camp Hill School District is systemically racist, as its school board and administrators apparently believe, then the Camp Hill School District should be shut down, and our school taxes should be refunded to us so we can use them to send our children to non-racist schools. We must stop our public servants from once again using the power of our government to divide us by race. We must restore the founding principles of our republic as articulated by the great emancipator, Abraham Lincoln, that we are a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. So let's restore equality and equal protection under the law so that your children, my children, and our children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. How can America survive as one nation if the majority of its population is made to feel deep guilt and shame for the actions of the founders and forefathers of our country, for the founding principles of our country? Some of the people pushing this ideology support the removal of the statues of our founders, like the father of our country, whom they condemn as a racist enslaver. If we remove and cancel from our history and our culture the father of our country, then who are we?